to sort of, oh my God. Okay.
Sorry, I forgot to hit record. We'll record now.
All right. Okay, fantastic. So as I've said before, I am going to talk about Ukraine. And if I sound bitter during this talk, it's because I am really bitter during this talk for large reasons that the aid to Ukraine is right now stalled in Congress due to some very bad people. I'm not even going to be apolitical about it. Due to some people who really don't seem to care all that much about anything but making a stand, making some sort of political stand. And this has been extremely difficult because Russia has been increasing the bombing by missiles and by other projectors. And every time I log on Twitter, I refuse to call it X because log on Twitter because it also doesn't happen to be anything that Western media is covering anymore. There is always really terrible shots of people covered in blood and cities being bombed and apartment buildings being bombed. They're also now getting missiles from both Iran and North Korea, and they're essentially overwhelming. They're just sending so many things in at the same time that the Patriot defense systems that the United States gave to Ukraine to defend its major cities is no longer working. There is also an issue that Russia is just a much bigger country that doesn't really give all that much of fluffs about its citizens and people, and is able to send waves upon waves upon waves of people into Ukraine. And now Ukraine is really, probably this is the darkest time for my country since the beginning of war, partially because of abandonment by the United States. And not partially, but wholly due to the abandonment by the United States. I'm not placing a blame on this on the Biden administration, which has been doing a lot for it. But, those who know whose fault it is shall remain nameless. Anyway, so I sound bitter because I am bitter. And, as I said before, this is a Ukrainian killjoy now, which I have felt like I've been a Ukrainian killjoy for 2 years, since February 24th of 2022, when I opened my laptop while at a leadership retreat, mind you, which is a really weird place to discover that your home country is getting bombed. And, my mother-in-law, Mila, who is here, her brother lives in Kiev and still lives in Kiev. And we had very, really stressful time finding out if he's okay or he's not okay. And my husband is also, they're all from Kiev. I'm from Odessa. Anyways, and this has not really stopped for 2 years. So it's been 2 years of this, and it has fundamentally altered my personality and ability to see life. Like, I am a very different person now than I was 2 years ago, and that was coming off COVID, which was bad enough as it is, right? So anyways, I am a Ukrainian killjoy, and I'm here to kill your joy. Hi. So why should we all keep caring about Ukraine? I think this is a question that is sort of on people's lives. Obviously, you're here, you care, at least in some ways, but I think it's not so much a research talk, but why should we care about Ukraine? Why should we care about Ukraine as American citizens? Or why should we care about Ukraine as citizens of the world? Or why should we care about Ukraine as a Jewish community? So I think these are important questions to cover, as well as to talk about what can we do if should you want to do something or help in any way? What can be done to help? Because I know this feels like an overwhelming thing. And I do, after the end of it, I'm not going to talk for long. If you have any questions, I'll sort of talk about some of my research interests that are coming out of this as well. But I want to talk in general about just why should we care? On some human level, obviously, we should care because people are dying and there is an invasion and terrible things are happening, and we should care about such things because we are human beings with some sort of ethics and morality. However, in the more real politics of things, why should we care about this as a Jewish community, right? This is Hillel, this is part of Jewish community. We, United States Jews, should care about Ukraine, if for no other reason that most of your relatives and most of your roots are based in Ukraine, right? You are all, in some ways, at least from Ukraine. Ukraine has been a center of Jewish life in the Russian Empire, long before United States was a glimmer of hope in someone's eye. It has been where most Jews have been killed by Nazis during World War II, including most of my family. My grandparents obviously survived because I'm here, but including most of my family, something that I have never been able to not know or forget about. And most of the immigrants, recent immigrants, Soviet Jewish immigrants to the refugees to the United States that came in waves in the 1970s and the 1980s, and a little more in 1990s, but the 1970s and 1980s. I came in the 1980s wave, mostly came from Ukraine as well. I am personally from Odessa. If you know anything about Odessa, know this, that it has been a center of Jewish life and Jewish humor and Jewish identity for centuries. You know, a lot of things that we call Borscht Belt and Borscht Belt humor that has informed most of New York comedian performances comes from Odessa. We are known as this free city by the sea that's full of funny people and people with good sense of humor that are able to joke their way out of everything. Let me tell you, I thought that was possible. Apparently, I cannot joke my way out. So I can joke my way out of a lot of things. There is a limit to how much jokes we can tell, right? I'm wearing a sailor shirt in that particular because Odessa is very much based in a relationship to the Black Sea. Most of you can trace the roots of Yiddish, the roots of Jewish culture, and roots of everything that, a lot of things that define us as Jewish population to Ukraine, and also quite honestly to Odessa. Right, so there is this idea why Jewish community should care about it, and I think that has to do a lot with ancestral and historical and cultural roots of the Jewish community in Ukraine. So that's why I think we should care about it as Jews. And I have been, in general, like my daughter has been going to Bornholm Jewish Community School for 5 years. She's finishing up her 5th grade there. I have been continuously impressed by the Jewish community's willingness to help. They've been kind to me and to us when the invasion started. They have been kind to Ukrainian refugees who are coming here. And, you know, it is definitely something that I've always appreciated about the Jewish community here in Memphis. And I hope that that continues because there is a lot of need and a lot of help that needs. A fun fact though, the Jewish refugees who come to United States do not actually have a status of refugee. I came here as a Jewish refugee from Soviet Union, you know, because back then it was Soviet Union. However, in order to be granted a refugee status, you have to demonstrate that you cannot go back to your place of birth because of some sort of political discriminatory thing. For whatever reasons, it's beyond me. I have some speculative reasons. Ukrainian refugees here, Ukrainian people who came here from the war, are granted a parole status, which I now know a lot more about immigration systems than I ever thought I would. A parole status is essentially a temporary exemption. It is here, you're here for X period of time. Right now, the Biden administration has extended this parole status until 2025, April of 2025. However, one of the things that's on the cutting floor of the Congress right now, and you will see that when you read, you know, if you open up New York Times and you read it, is parole. And how many people we let in the United States let in this parole. Now, one of the countries that this is directly going to affect is Ukraine. Another one is Afghanistan, right? Because people there are coming here also on parole. Now, Afghani people, because of Taliban regime in their country, are then can qualify for an asylum once they come here for parole, right? Ukrainians can, because they're not technically escaping their own regime and their own countries, they're escaping the temporary quote-unquote invasion. Now, if this gets cut, and if in 2025, April 2025, they decide to cut down parole, all of these Ukrainian people who are here in the country and who are working and, you know, doing the best that they can will have to leave. And where they will go at that point is kind of unclear to me. Now, this is why do we care about this? Well, I care about this because we are hosting a Ukrainian refugee. I refuse to refer to them as parolee because that's kind of silly thing. So we should care about this because of that. We should care about this for many other reasons. I actually just finished yesterday doing, in order to qualify for parole, someone here in the United States has to give you an invitation. So essentially you go online and you fill out a form and you say, I am agreed to be financially responsible for this family when they come. So there'll be a place for them to stay. I will feed them until they get on their feet. So I just did this yesterday. I spent like hours yesterday doing this for my friend and his family who cannot stay there anymore. It is not, they can't. Odessa is getting bombed. Anyway, so I am trying to get them out. Whether or not I'm going to be able to get them out depends wholly on the United States Congress. So again, some of this stuff that I am not so joyful for is because of this direct family experience. Now, what else? So we should care about this as Jewish citizens. Why should we keep caring about the United States as American citizens? Now, we should care about these American citizens because Ukraine is a democratic country that's trying to determine its own future. And it's trying to determine and trying to just be able to make decisions about its own future and its own life, right? And how they're going to rule themselves, how they're going to, the self-determination, right? Which is something that Russia does, is directly opposed to it, right? One of the things about Russia is that it sees Ukraine as its territory. It does not see Ukraine as its own country. It has never acknowledged Ukraine's right to exist as an independent nation. It has colonized Ukraine for centuries, long before Soviet Union. It has murdered and killed people in Ukraine to the degree to which we don't even know about because there is so much people have been murdered by the regime, right? And who right now is treating Ukraine as a starting gambit in its own imperial ambitions. Now, of course, this represents a direct threat to the United States security and well-being. In the geopolitical realm, I know we all wish we didn't live in that reality, but we live in that reality, right? That Russia that's not stopped at Ukraine is a Russia that poses a lot of financial security and financial risks and security risks to the United States. Therefore, as President Biden has argued, oh, kitty. Anyways, the only thing that can still bring me joy is a kitty cat. Anyways, as President Biden argued and is completely correct in this assessment, is that if Russia wins this war, Russia becomes the center of the empire. And from that follows China is looking to see what can be done to Taiwan, and so is Iran, honestly. Because Russia supports the Iranian regime with all its own oppressions and problems and violences, right, is also in direct opposition to the interests of United States and also, quite honestly, direct opposition to the interests of Israel as well. That a powerful Iran that's supported by a powerful Russia is not something that's going to be great for the Middle East. Period. And I don't mean just for Israel, but for the entirety of the Middle East. So we have these countries with totalitarian and imperialist ambitions that are trying to essentially dictate the rights of the nation. Now, the struggle against this is long. And it has always been unrealistic to expect Ukraine to win the war in a year. And then after that, we are just tired of it. So the war has not gone it has gone successfully because, the Kyiv still stands. President Zelensky, who is Jewish, is still the president of Ukraine. Kharkiv region has been liberated. But Russia has been successful in occupying that sort of east-south bridge to Mariupol, from Mariupol to the Crimea, right? And it has occupied those territories and is now starting to make gains in the east. Without United States support for the military, without ability to buy artillery, without the ability, you can't have a war without weapons, unfortunately. As for peace talks, You have to have peace in order to do peace talks. You have to trust the people with whom you're doing peace talks with, right? And the idea that Russia is going to negotiate in good faith and is going to not even if there is negotiation, Ukraine loses territory. Now, whether or not it loses territory is a good thing or a bad thing is open to debate. I think it's a bad thing. I also think it is probably inevitable. But the whole point is that this is not the determination of Russia or the determination of the United States. This is something that should be a determination of the Ukrainian people, right? Something that they're not. It is also a simple fact that Ukraine simply cannot. It's a poor country. It's the biggest country in Europe. It has 44 million people, but it is not a rich country. And it cannot fight this war without international support. It's just not financially. It's not possible for it to fight war. The fact that Russia has been stopped so far is wholly due for the support of the United States. And if you want to know what's going on in Ukrainian Twitter and has been going on Ukrainian Twitter, there's probably not a country in the world that loves the United States as much as Ukraine loves the United States. And that's quite honestly is the case. But whether it's a good or a bad thing is completely up to you. But it is a lot of, there is a big need for the United States in this country. Why should we also care about this as a global citizen? So here is the story that makes me very sad. You want to be sad again? So this is a story. We had in our house a couple of weekends ago, before the snowstorm. So we have a room. I'm pointing that way. It's to the wall. It's this way. We have a room, right? It has a separate exit and entrance. And about last year, we met this woman. She works for World Relief now. And she works to help Ukrainian refugees. She's herself a Ukrainian refugee from Kherson. She came here from Kherson in February of last year, or January of last year, with $28 to her name. Anyway, she's staying with us. Anyway, so World Relief wanted to organize some event for Ukrainians. And anyways, and I said, we can use our house. It's always nice at someone's house. So some Ukrainian families came, but also some family from Tajikistan came. And Tajikistan is one of the republics, one of the countries that are under Russian Empire influence and that are located in the Central Asia, right? By all definitions, they are what we in the United States would refer to as people of color, right? So we met a couple of Tajiki families who lived in Moscow before they came here. Now, who wants to take a guess why they're in the United States now? And it is a really evil guess. Who wants to take a guess? Imagine the most evil things that a country can do to another country. One of the most evil. Guess why they're in the United States. Beverly, I think you can guess why they're in the United States.
Is it ethnic cleansing that they were going to be targeted?
Close, yes, very close. Apparently, Tajikistan's citizenship is only allowed by Russia. And at any moment, Russia can take away the citizenship of Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and all these Central Asia countries, and send those people, declare them to be Russian citizens, and send them to war against Ukraine. That is, anyways, right? And so these people who were living in Moscow, right, and were sort of having a good life in Moscow, there's a whole lot of people who came to the United States now. They could not just come to the United States because they weren't under Ukrainian parole. So what they had to do is they flew to Mexico and crossed the southern border of Mexico. So there is a stream of people who don't want to be, who are part of Russia, and who are specifically because the people in Russia who Russian government is sending to war are specifically from the Siberia region, which are also their ethnic minority, essentially. And from these republics, there has been an influx of people, right, coming to the United States from Mexican border because they want to be dragged into a war against Ukraine. So we were here, like it was really this really weird moment. There was a bunch of Ukrainians and a bunch of Tajiks, right? And they're all speaking Russian because that's the language of the empire, right? And all I had to say to them, like, well, thank you for deciding to do this as opposed to go and fight us. And they're like, we don't want to do this. Like, Ukrainian people are not our enemy. You know, like, I don't want to die in a war, imperialist war. So they had to go through. And the southern border is its own thing. So one of the things that I also want to do as part of this talk is to draw your attention that while there needs to be an immigration reform in this country and has needed to be for a long time, people who are crossing these borders are not some sort of nameless, faceless masses, right? They're doing this for reasons that are like just messed up, right? They're just messed up reasons. I mean, what do you even say to that? And if you think about this, then how can Ukraine win, right? If Russia has endless supply of war meat, right? Not just from itself as the largest, but from all these republics and I keep referring to them republics, even though they're considered countries, but they are republics still, right? In some ways, their citizenships are just whatever Russia wants to give them, right? There is no secure Europe, there is no secure Asia, there is no secure world in a state where Russia can do this. Or any country could do this, period. It is just the wrong thing to do. So this is why we should care about this as global citizens. So my last 2 years, and I'm sure some of the entire diaspora's 2 years, have been spent in different states of what is a word? Of mental anguish is probably the most correct word of this, right? Now, we are functional because, you know, what are you going to do? You have to still, like, you know, go to work and feed your kids and do all this. And we're not in Ukraine and we're not getting bombed. But we are here observing the ways in which the world sort of forgetting what is really at stake in the fight in Ukraine. And yes, it is Ukrainian self-determination. It is a fight for democracy, which is, you know, a values that we share, right? But what we see in what I have seen on both the right and the left of this country, on those type of sides, is a complete. The right I cannot speak to. Those are, you know, for better or worse, are not my people. They seem to be struggling with their own identity, you know, and with isolationist impulses. But, you know, as someone who has always considered myself being a part of the left, I don't think it's really that much of a surprise. I'm a professor at the university, right? So a part of the left, and with whom I share a lot of the same ideals, what I have seen that has been very troubling is, again, incapacity of understanding the situation as anything other than as on its own terms. A lot of times what I've heard from the left, from my friends on the left, is that this is just only a response. This is because of NATO. This is because of American imperialism. This is really a struggle between Russian imperialism and American imperialism. And to that, I want to say it is not. Because Russia was an empire long before the United States was a dream in someone else's eye. And to say that Russian imperialism is only a reaction to American imperialism is ahistorical. I really am trying to control the swear words because that's really the only way I can describe this. But you can insert whatever swear word you want to say. But it's a historical delusion. And one of the things that has been hurtful for me and for other members of Ukrainian diaspora on the side is the idea that the same people whose fight we've always been fighting for are sort of treating this as an inconvenience, or if nothing else, just a demonstration of American imperialism. It is not a demonstration of American imperialism. This is one of these fights where the United States is completely on the right side of history. There is not like, it is. It's just there is no, like, we don't need to worry about it. It was doing a good thing. United States was doing a good thing, and it should keep doing this good thing because it's a good thing to do, both for its own security interests, for Ukraine's safety, for Ukraine's right to exist, but for Europe, but also for the security of the world. Now, I want to leave some time for question and answers. Where has this taken me? Well, one of the places it's taken me is doing more research on refugees So I am currently editor-elect. I'm becoming an editor of a journal in our field, Communication and Critical Cultural Studies. It's one of the top journals in our field. Sneha is actually my editorial assistant. And my first special issue on it will be on the topic of refuge. So I'm hoping to invite people to try to theorize refuge and to talk about the difference between relation, because we tend to say immigrant to all people, and not everyone is an immigrant. Like, I am not an immigrant. I was not able to go home, and now I cannot go home again. You know, like, whatever my home idea of home is, this has been ripped away from me by the same empire twice in my life. You know, whatever emotional stuff this is not therapy. I say that for my therapist. Anyways, but you know, it's not refuge, it's different, right? You can't go home. Your idea of home is completely fractured. We need to theorize that in order to understand what do we mean when we say refuge. Another project I work on also with Sneha is on analysis of a movie called His House. And if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. I can put it in the chat. It's on Netflix. It's a horror movie, but it's not. It's 2020, and it's about Sudanese refugees in England and the ghosts that they bring with them. And it's really about trauma of refuge. I highly recommend this movie if you want to understand what it means to be a refugee. It is wonderful. And another thing that I'm trying to work on, and I'm trying to actually find funding to work on, is I am very interested in the way that empires destroy language. So one of the things that has been fascinating to me and has been very difficult is that my native language is Russian. I speak Russian. I can understand Ukrainian, but I'm like a puppy, right? I understand everything. I cannot say a word, right? I mean, I'm just like a puppy dog, right? Because I was raised in Soviet Union, and because the regionality of Ukraine is such that the south and east are Russian speaking. When the war started, there has been an awakening of, and it was there before, because the war really started, has been going on for 10 years. This is the full-scale invasion part of it. Since the start of the full-scale invasion, and so much before, there has been a move, like in Ukrainian community and in Ukraine, to switch to Ukrainian. Now, it's all nice and good to say that. However, I'm going to be 49 years old in like a week, 2 weeks, right? And it's not that easy to just start speaking a new language, especially when you're not embraced in it. So one of the things that we get is that people in the diaspora are talking a lot about what it means, and people in Ukraine as well, what it means to open your mouth and have the language of your enemy come out, right? And what it means to the directions of identity. So one of the research projects I've been hoping to get off the ground, I just need to find time to do that, and is that to do interviews with Ukrainian diaspora, and especially to talk about, like, what does it mean to speak Russian now? Right? How does it change your relationship to them? And to build into this, there has been actually, and I'm sure no one knows about this, but there has been a significant development. And actually, like, so when we left Soviet Union in 1989, when my mother-in-law left Soviet Union in 1974, they took away our citizenship because we were no longer citizens of anything. So we spent 6 years of our lives in the United States as stateless, without a citizenship, which is a really weird thing to be. Like, traveling is just messed up with that, right? We had a special stateless passport and everything. 6 years of our life, we were stateless. Ukraine has so far only recognized one citizenship, Ukrainian citizenship. And just this week, President Zelensky announced that he is proposing a law to Congress, to his own legislative body, that's expected to pass, that is going to essentially, as he worded, allows diaspora to come home, that allows multi-citizenship. And so once this passes, I can get my Ukrainian citizenship back without giving up my United States citizenship, something I fully intend to do, because this empire took it away from me and I want it back. I don't know, I don't care about any benefits of it. It's a purely, you know, I'm happy being United States citizen, but I want that citizenship back. The empire took it away. I want it back. And he actually released this really beautiful video. I cried. I'm not gonna lie. I cried a little bit. I know. I was talking to my mom, and my mom is like, but why do you want it back? I'm like, because those bastards took it away, and now I'm going to get it back. Because F you empire, right? Fuck you empire. So this is where I am at. This is the stuff that's been going on. This is the stuff that's been going on in Ukrainian diaspora and the Ukraine. I'm going to pause here and take some questions. I realize it's not a traditional research talk, but I hope you got something out of it.
I want to start speaking first because I have to run to another meeting in like next 10 minutes. But I came here to just support Marina, just to hear about her work. But I myself is an immigrant. I grew up in India and my situation is completely different. But then again, there is this tiny link that always travels through immigration and non-America born people who are residing in this country for various reasons is immigration reform. And I have been looking at it from an academic scholarly point of view, and I'm so glad to be a part of this talk, which just expands my idea of the problem. And it's just like I learned a lot, and it allows me to put things into perspective. And it's like I was looking at one problem, but then I can see it's just not one problem. There are multiple phases of the problem. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Elsa. And Elsa, so kind. I remember like it was right after the invasion started, she cooked me this amazing Indian dinner and it was delicious and I couldn't stomach food for the first like couple of months. I lost so much weight and I couldn't really eat any of it, but it was absolutely delicious. And she sat with me and we cried. And it was kind.
I plan to cook for you this semester again. I plan to cook again.
Anyways, it was really bad. I was like, this is so delicious. And I cannot hold my food down because it was very stressful. Anyways, but yeah, but immigrants are immigrants are immigrants. And I have loved my immigrant friends because they have understood things on emotional level much more than, yeah. Questions about anything, really. I am very open. Like, we can chat. I can entertain questions about cats and how to have 4 of them. Yeah, Beverly, hi.
I'm one of the classes I'm teaching this semester is World since 1945. And we're using a textbook that I've been using for years, but we're about to do like this week. I actually recorded the lecture right before this and then realized my microphone was off. So I'm going to redo it, but I'm glad because I'm going to put stuff in that you brought up because it's really significant. The chapter we're on right now is about Russia and its kind of roots, its imperial roots before it became the Soviet Union. And there's a lot in there about, ethnic, like the so-called empire of justice that was not actually just to so many people. What you said really struck me about the Central Asian republics, about the citizenship just being able to get revoked if they don't fight in this war they don't believe in. I mean, that's definitely something I'm going to include for my students. And I'm wondering, what would you say to students who are trying to kind of make sense of like they've got all the news and they know what you said is so powerful about the way the Republican, there are particular people posturing in this country to play the war with Gaza and Israel and the war that's devastating Ukraine for years at this point. It's just, I don't even know how to phrase this as a question. It's just so frustrating. And I find myself struggling to talk to students because we're like technically employees of the state of Tennessee and I want to tell them exactly how I feel. And there's only so much I can do without the MAGA ones freaking out. And how do you kind of like walk that with your students, like particularly the undergrads who are, bless their heart, but they're fucking clueless. And I don't know how to help them.
Well, you're in a very tough position. You're teaching history to undergraduates. God, I mean, I teach film classes. I teach film classes to upper division students, and I've stopped my classes before to talk about Ukraine. I have, especially like because I just couldn't. I'm like, you know what? This is the university. This is education. You have any questions? And they do have questions. I think one of the things that in my sense, what I think is going on a lot here, and this is me coming out as a media studies scholar, our students don't fundamentally have any media literacy skills. The schools are not teaching students media literacy. You can get me on the whole other tangent about what I think about the fact that our elementary, like our K through 12 education, and both private and public, are just not preparing students, kids, to be citizens of this world. They're leaning to have, yes, let's annotate a novel. Okay, fine. Sorry to all the English majors, but who cares, right? Who cares, right? Teach them how algorithms work. Teach them how what they see works, right? Because even with my film students, when I start asking them, okay, you're on TikTok, right? Do you know who is holding the algorithm of TikTok? And they're like, China. I'm like, okay, fine. How do you understand that the people who control algorithms control the kind of messages that they see, and that the reason why TikTok is so dangerous fundamentally is because what Chinese government has done through TikTok is to destabilize United States role in the world, right? By offering information that is not maybe even inaccurate, but accurate in a very specific way, right? Right? You know, the fact that Elon Musk controls Twitter algorithm, even though they're not on Twitter anymore, right? Or Alpha controls exactly what you see, the kind of messages you see, and controls things, right? And again, like, I really don't want to get into Israel-Gaza thing right now because, right? Because I feel like I'm going to scream if I do. But it's true, right? It's true about this. It's true about that, right? We can only, and then people can only understand what's happening in these countries through the point of view of, first of all, only through the point of view that's given to them on TikTok, but also through only understanding race in a very specific way that United States talks about race. And that is a big problem, right? I think one of the most powerful things that we can do for our students is to complicate race, right? To complicate race and start treating race as a global thing, as opposed to only an understanding of this, right? One of the things that I started losing my mind on right at the beginning of the war is that people in the United States, and this was, again, the left, anyways, they were like, you know, but there were these Nigerian people students who got stuck at the border, and that's racist. And I would say to this, okay, borders are racist. Okay. Second of all, they got stuck there for 48 hours and they were let go, right? And third of all, should it have happened? No. But is this the most important thing that's going on in that world right now? No, even they themselves are kind of like, they're fine, right? We don't care so much about this anymore. But this was the only thing that United States left could focus on. And I did not know what the message of it was, like that Ukraine is a racist country. Sure, every country is a racist country. Like, what does this mean? Like, what is and part of this? And that's a problem, right? But you're in a tough spot, Beverly. I mean, you're teaching history to undergrads, and it's necessary, but it's also really hard. Invite me, I'll talk to them. Elsa has her hand up.
Yes, on the same line, because I teach film history 1 and 2. Film history 1 is like 1890s through 1940s, and then film history 2 is 1940s to 1970s. And these are like the most, I couldn't say, I mean, every time is crucial, but this is like when the world as we know it today was being shaped. And we look at the history, it's a film history class, but we are not looking at film history per se. We are looking at human history, geopolitical history. And if you are interested, I am going to invite you to, I'm not really sure when I'm teaching it again, but I will invite you to one of those classes where, if you want a part of it, because we do teach like Soviet cinema. And that's something that, I mean, we are looking at this particular decade from different lenses, like how this country is reacting to it, how US is reacting to it, how Italy is reacting to it, how Soviet is reacting to it, and how India, say for example, is reacting to 1940s. So the cinema is a reflection of how the country wants itself to be reflected by the rest of the world. And also there are independent cinema, there are government cinema. So you see the difference between how independent entities are looking at this time and how the government wants everybody to look at them. So yes, if you're interested, I would love to invite you to that class.
Oh, Alja, this is too tangential to Marina's thing, but can I email you about speaking to my, because we're going to watch Deepa Mehta's film Earth. Yeah, we're watching it in my World Since 1945 class in like 3 weeks. And if you could just it's an asynchronous online thing, but if I could have you for maybe like 10, 15 minutes that
Yes.
week, awesome. Okay, I will email you. I'm so glad that
I
I came
love
to
this. You guys will love each other.
No, I
Sure.
love these connections. I love these connections. Dr. Levina, I had a question about the language piece. I was really struck by that, people having to speak the language of their enemies, the language of their captors. We're also joined by a sick Max. So I would just love to hear more about language and if there are other examples of that.
I mean, there are, right? Because, I mean, what do you mean by other example?
Other examples of people who have had to speak the language of their captors or the language of their oppressors.
Well, we have a couple of Indian people here who I'm sure have a lot to say on this. Neha, you want to talk about this?
Yes. I think looking back at the history of India's partition, we can say there are several examples of that. Because if you look back at the history, India used to be a huge country. And after the big colonial eras of British rule, India was divided in two parts, which is Pakistan and India. But later, Pakistan used to be in two different parts, one in the eastern side of India and the other part in the western side of India. It was like the border was drawn according to the religious division of the country. And the areas which were predominantly Muslim were considered Pakistan. But after a few years, in 1972, people from eastern Pakistan, which is now Bangladesh, they started realizing that the official language from their part of the country was also Urdu, which happens to be the dominant language of West Pakistan. And they were forcing the language on people of eastern Pakistan, whereas the people of eastern Pakistan who are now Bangladesh, their mother tongue was Bengali. They were speaking in Bengali, and they started revolving. And India, which happened to be the independent country back then, they helped them out. And it used to be called the Bhasha Andolon, and which means the language revolution. And people like fought for their language, for their motherland, their culture, and they started being calling Bangladesh. And they have their Shohid Diwas, which means they respect their language. It is all about the language. So people who are interested, I would love them to take a look at the history of Bengali and the whole tension between Pakistan and Bangladesh, and how Bangladesh introduced itself as a independent country, and it had a lot to do with language.
Yes, that's yeah. Please go ahead. No, I mean, yes, that just to piggyback back of that, basically it's a fight which is being fought. There were other reasons, but then again, this was a fight which was primarily being fought for their own language. People died because there was this rally where there is now this monument for the partiers who died because of their language. So, and when it became a nation of its own, it was not named based on anything else but language. So that's why it's called Bangladesh. The language is Bangla, and that Desh is country. So it's a Bangla land. It's a land of language. So that's how it has been named since 1971. So yes.
But also empires destroy language, right? They just do. That's kind of how you take over. I mean, I'm sure indigenous population here has some really strong feelings about, you know, the disappearances of their languages. And I'm sure that enslaved Africans who were brought here and were forced to speak English also would have some strong feelings about having to speak the language of the enemy. So it's not necessarily a new phenomenon. I think that's part of empire building. What's interesting here is that it's happening now, right? Like this resistance to it is happening now, and you have a kind of a fresh case study of this, right? With people who can articulate this and actually talk about this as they're trying to deprogram themselves on a different language. And like there is an article, and articles written by Ukrainians who live in Ukraine, whom Russian is a native language, and they're like, we are trying really hard to speak Ukrainian, but really like our conversation with families have now become just these declarative sentences that we have memorized how to say. And so we just declare things at each other because that ease of language is not there the way that a native language would be. So, and I tried to learn Ukrainian, and honest to God, I have failed because, you know, I live here and I have a lot of other things to do. And, you know, but I'm very excited when people speak Ukrainian to me because I can understand a whole lot. And it feels like at least I can understand it. I don't even know why I can understand it. It's really strange. It's been very strange. We've been told such a long time because we were Jews in Soviet Union. We were told we were not Russians. We were told we were not Ukrainians. We were told that we are Jewish. And the last 2 years, understanding that I am Ukrainian has been quite, actually kind of a cool journey. I think we have one more question or not, if anyone has anything. Otherwise, thank you for coming.
Thank you, Dr. Levina. We are so grateful.
And if I can add one more thing, if you want to support Ukraine, pick up a phone, call your representative in Senate, and tell them to please support funding for Ukraine. It's like, takes 2 minutes. It's something you can do. And I think it matters. I don't know if it matters, but it's doing something, you know, as opposed to doing nothing. Yeah. Thank you so much, Sophie, for having me. And thank you, everyone, for coming.
Thank you all. We'll see you next time. Have a good rest of your day, everyone.
Okay, bye.